Friday, December 12th. It's about 2 p.m. Eastern time, so we've got a couple hours until lock. Let's run through minutes for each team, look at some injuries, possible replacements. Starting in Atlanta, Porzingis continues to miss games. Trae Young still out. Jalen Johnson, 38 expected minutes. I think he's definitely in play as an MVP this week with so many teams without even one game. Jalen Johnson gets 2. So Keaton Wallace would get the biggest boost, but it only gets him up to 16% usage, which is still well below league average at 20. Jalen Johnson bumps all the way up to 28. And surprisingly, it's a guy like Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who's been kind of role player for the last couple years, stepped into a much bigger role now that he's playing a little bit off the ball with Atlanta, and he's scoring for him. Problem is, L10's all the way up at 39. He has had a couple of big games. He had a 63 and a 58, but I don't think we can expect those. Usually he's going to give you right around that high 30s number. Moving to Detroit, everybody's pretty fresh now that they've had a bunch of time off. So Detroit expected to go pretty deep here, 9 deep on the regular rotation. Cade's obviously an MVP candidate as well. You get a fresh Jalen Duren. Moving to Indiana. Same guys out. I had a question about Mathurin, Nembhard, Brandon Miller. I like Mathurin. I think his scoring upside is very high. He just gets rolling. He keeps going. Those are the kind of guys we like, offensively aggressive. We can look here at changes when certain players are off the floor. Siakam up just a hair, still at 30% usage is really high. And then, of course, you got Mathurin up at 27. Billy's going to be interested tonight, so Maxey is apparently ill. Missed his first game of the season tonight. Now, he's played through things already this season. I think he was ill a different time and downgraded to questionable and then still played. So this isn't a death sentence for Maxey lineups. He may actually be ruled in tonight, and this is with the Atlanta-Detroit game, the first game of the night. So if you want to wait to the wire and see if Maxey goes, you can probably play him, assuming he's going to go. I'm assuming Embiid is good. He's had almost a week here, I think, to recover. So if he can't play tonight, he shouldn't ever play, I wouldn't think. Let's look at some minutes. So 28 on the high end for Embiid, coming off a terrible game. His point per minute is 1.28, which is still pretty decent. Standard deviation pretty low. So he's been fairly consistent, and these are 2 decent matchups. If he can get it going at all, that 32 L10, really low for a Joel Embiid talent. The L10 to talent ratio is pretty high right now. So I would think it may be worth a look here at that 32. Maybe you catch lightning in the bottle tonight or in Atlanta on Sunday. Indiana's not as bad a defense as you think they are. I know this is a bad team, but this defense is right around league average. See that here. They're actually a little better than league average. They allow 231.3 so rare points a game so far this season. League average 232.1. So not as advantageous as you think, but low L10 for a guy like Embiid. Still a productive player, even now when he doesn't look nearly as good as he did a couple years ago. He just set a real high standard for himself. 1.28 still very good. I look at it like Towns is 1.33. So some upside here for Joel Embiid if he can go, and he's probable, so I'd expect him to tonight. I think you can definitely play him. And probably one that won't be popular, coming off a terrible game. I think people have kind of checked out on him. George should go. Edgecombe's back. You've got Grimes. Talked about this in the Discord this morning, but if Maxey wouldn't go, numbers. These are the overall numbers when Maxey isn't on the floor, and then this is the differential, so you can see who benefits the most. Grimes, Edgecombe, even Jabari Walker up, 6% usage. So for Grimes, that gets him into the high 20s. That's a play. Paul George, 28. That's a play. And Embiid, if Maxey wouldn't go, they would be relying a lot on Embiid probably. So 35.5 in a short period of time that he's been without Maxey this year. Another reason to play Embiid if Maxey is indeed ruled out. What else do we have that's interesting? So Jared Allen was ruled out yesterday. So they've been out without him for a couple games. Minutes breakdown like this. Cavs are playing Mitchell and Mobley about 35. Garland still not getting full minutes, but he's over 30 now. Jalen Tyson's played really well this year. You've got DeAndre Hunter. They always kind of limit him to 20s. And then the bench does play for Cleveland, so they'll go about 10 deep. Looking at the usage numbers here, who does the most with these guys off the floor? It's Donovan Mitchell at the 33% usage, and that's not even an increase over games when these guys are playing. He would be about there anyway. So you can always use Donovan Mitchell, especially in matchups with Washington. And we've got Charlotte on Sunday. So these Cleveland guys for the game week, you could take 2 cracks at 2 pretty bad teams. And Cleveland hasn't been spectacular this year. So yes, they could blow out both of these teams, but that's not a guarantee. You could get a big Mobley game. You could get a big Garland game. You could get a big Mitchell game. Even a guy like DeAndre Hunter, capable of a big game. And then you got your bench guys. And if your bench guys end up playing more because it is a blowout, you got your Porters, Dean Wade, Lonzo Ball. So things to look at in Cleveland. On the Washington side, Bob Carrington moves into the starting lineup, gets over 30. Kind of like that for him. He's had definitely a down year as opposed to last year. He hasn't done much the last 10 games or so, but then a 33 against the Hawks when he got more minutes. 16 L10. He's definitely worth a look right now, I think. In 2 games for Washington, they've got the Cavs tonight, and then they've got the Pacers on Sunday. Now, one argument against Bub is this 0.63 so rare points a minute so far this year. Standard deviation doesn't change much. It's just been bad across the board. But again, with increased minutes, increased opportunities, hopefully he gets it going a little bit. I think he's a better player than this. George, we know, is always up and down, but he gets 2 cracks at it. McCollum will try to fill it up. Bagley's L10 still low enough where he's in play. I think it's 21 right now. And some bench guys will definitely get some run. Vukovic, Will Riley, Trey Johnson. I would say all of them at least in play this week. So Chicago, there's a deal on the table with Minnesota that involves Coby White. So we shall see. I think the Bulls are going to be an active team at the deadline, a hot start, and then a fizzle here in late November, early December. Have them 9-14, going the wrong direction. So let's look at minutes for the Bulls. Giddey leads the way with 34, and then you've got a bunch of guys here in around the 30 range. Trey Jones told reporters he's going to play. Looks like they don't have anybody that isn't probable right now in this group. So I'd expect all these guys to go. And they're definitely spreading around the minutes right now. But this team should be fresh. They haven't played much lately. Dosunmu and Hurt are out, open up some wing minutes. More for Coby White if he can take advantage of it tonight. And they're playing Charlotte, not the best defensive team in the league. Charlotte going to be without LaMelo Ball. So that'll open up KJ Simpson's minutes a little bit because Trey Mann, the second point guard's also out. KJ Simpson's cards got pretty expensive. I sold mine. I believe he is a 12 L10, getting about 29 minutes as a starter. Had a decent game last game. I think him and Zion James will split the point guard minutes. More opportunities with LaMelo out for Bridges. Let's see who the biggest usage guys are with all these guys out. It's Brandon Miller, actually. 36% usage when these 5 are off the floor for Brandon Miller. Let's expect him to be aggressive. Bridges and Knipple pretty far behind, actually. That's interesting with Brandon Miller. I did not expect to see that. 36 is really high usage, so he may be worth a look. 29 L10. Yeah, I know we've seen this guy go into the 40s and even the 50s before. He seems to get hurt a lot, sometimes in-game. So it's kind of hard to trust him. You see he played a couple, then DNP'd a couple times. He's missed most of the year with injuries. Yeah, play him at your own risk, but he's certainly an upside play, especially if he has that high usage tonight against a pretty bad Bulls team. And he's nothing spectacular, 1.04 points per minute. Pretty run-of-the-mill player, according to these numbers. But the minutes are there and the usage is there. So there's a ceiling. It's over 50. I think at a 29 L10, you can take that risk if you want. Somebody was asking Mathurin. Yeah, Mathurin, I've got around, these 3 guys are right around the same point here. 29s and 30s for L10s. And the ceilings are all right around 50. Miller actually the highest ceiling. And with this particular lineup construction, he may be the one you want to turn to. Personally, I like Mathurin. All right. Moving on, last 3 here. Niang still hasn't played yet this year. Utah otherwise pretty healthy. Like they'll go about 10 deep. Markkanen and George, 34. Bailey, 30. Let's look at those on-off court numbers. So the aggressive 2 on the team, Keontae George, Lauri Markkanen, both in those high 20s for usage. Everybody else, other than Sensabaugh, who doesn't play much, under league average. I think you know what you're getting here. And if you get a blowout, sometimes those guys only play 20-some minutes anyway. Ja Morant up to probable tonight. They will welcome him back. He's been out for a while. Looks like probably a minute restriction for him. He'd be about 28. So you are still going to see Vince Williams and a little Cam Spencer. And if we're looking at this lineup, oh, sorry, Edey was out as well. So you'll see Jock Landale in the starting lineup as a 26. He's going to be a popular play. He's a 21 L10, which is a little higher than I'd like. Pretty average player, 0.99 SORAR points per minute, get 26 minutes. That gives him a ceiling of about 36. So at 21, yeah, that's playable. When the floor is right around the L10, you can certainly do that play. But temper expectations on the ceiling, especially if Morant's back. I feel like he's going to take a lot of the usage, whereas some of the other guys would be more likely to pass it into Landale. For Brooklyn, it's Porter and Clowney and Claxton, followed by Demeen and Terrence Mann. Then you got your bench guys. When everybody's healthy here, it's Michael Porter with a huge 30% usage. That 48 L10 is too high. Has had some games in the 50s and 60s, so if you're really desperate for a cheap MVP, it's worth a shot, I guess. But I wouldn't expect huge score. That's about the ceiling for him, I would think. Yep, and the numbers tell the story. You've got a guy with a 1.3, that's good. 33 minutes. But that 48 L10 and a 56.6 ceiling, probably not a great play unless you're throwing in MVP. And if you're throwing in MVP, that means you just don't really have anybody else to play this weekend. Wish some of these secondary guys on the Nets were a little more aggressive. I want to see more from Jaeger Demon, from Clowney. Claxton's been putting up nice scores, but he's not an aggressive. He doesn't look for his own shot. He's basically getting his numbers on blocks and rebounds and putbacks. For Dallas, Ryan Nembhard in the starting lineup. Should be fully rested, this team. Russell questionable. Gafford doubtful. I wouldn't expect him to play. Russell I don't think makes much of a difference anymore because he is now their third guard. And Davis, expect him to suck up most of the usage here, 29%, with Irving, Lively, and Exum off the floor. And the last game of the night is Minnesota at Golden State. Anthony Edwards questionable with a foot injury. Now he was with an illness in Phoenix, ended up playing and scoring 40. We went over this last time, but Mike Conley, Rob Dillingham, normally the players that step up when Edwards is out, although Dillingham has been surpassed in the rotation by Bones Hyland. So look for Bones Hyland to get those backup point guard minutes. Mike Conley's out. Ooh, this could be a big this could be a Bones Hyland game. Didn't see that Mike Conley was also out. What's he got going on? Achilles tendinopathy. Okay, well, that's not good for a 38-year-old. So another calf injury. Conley definitely not going to play. Okay, let's look at this. So who's handling the ball here? If Edwards plays, it'll be him with the starters. Maybe a little DiVincenzo. So, yeah, starters going to have to take minutes. Bones could certainly get more than 16, in my opinion. And you may see Dillingham get back in the rotation now with Conley out. And he may feel like he has something to prove. So, this is going to be an interesting one. If Edwards sits, this is going to be a really interesting one for the Wolves. Let's look at Edwards on-off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take Edwards and Conley both off the floor. And it's Julius Randle with the highest usage. It's Naz Reid with the high usage. Dillingham actually had pretty high usage with both those guys off the floor as well. But like I was saying, Bones kind of passed him. So we'll see what their rotation looks like. Not sure what to recommend here, to be perfectly honest. Maybe Naz. Well, definitely Randle if Edwards can't go. I think he picks up a lot of the scoring load. DiVincenzo even though this number doesn't tell that story. Naz is at 34. That's pretty high for him. 35 for Randle seems like a good play if Edwards is out. If he's playing point forward and distributing and scoring, you know, we've seen this guy scores in the high 60s in previous seasons. I think he's still capable of that on a given night. Hyland at a 7, coming off a 20-pointer. He's definitely in play. Rob Dillingham at a 9, coming off a DNP. He's probably going to have to be in there. Maybe you see a bounce back from him after the benching. So definitely an interesting one in Golden State for Minnesota. On the other side of that, you've got Draymond Green out and Al Horford out. Trace Jackson-Davis is probable. So down a couple of bigs here for Golden State. Maybe Rudy feasts a little bit. So Golden State starting post, floor spreader, 27 minutes. Kind of like that, honestly. Guy that can shoot threes against Rudy Gobert, who likes to just stay in the paint. Definitely a small team without the size of Draymond Green and Horford. We'll see what this looks like. But they do have both Butler and Curry back. So I expect the Warriors to look pretty good tonight. And when Draymond and Horford are both out, Curry a 37% usage. You see more usage for guys like Santos and Kuminga, but they probably won't play. But he healed up a little bit. Butler actually down to a very normal range here. So I think Curry is the play between Curry and Butler. Steph at a 41. Yeah, you can definitely play him. Butler at a 41, I'd be more careful with. I think Steph is the play. You see Curry right next to Edwards here. 1.36 for Curry. Even in his old age, he's producing more than Edwards is. 30 minutes, maybe on kind of a minute restriction. We'll see, but he doesn't need a lot of time. He just gets hot and goes nuts sometimes. 62.5 for a ceiling for Curry. I think that's good. I believe my projections are finally getting to the point where they are more accurate. Hit a couple of really nice dailies. Had an 11th place and an 8th place overall finish out of 4,000 entrants. I mean, we're getting somewhere. The ceiling projections that I use, not going to work every week, but you are going to hit some really big ones. That's the hope. Anyway, stick with it, guys. We're getting into the meat of the season. We're about a third of the way through. Getting through the Emirates, then it kind of gets normal for a while. I think that's when we start to do really well. Thanks for watching. Good luck this weekend.